In the previous video, we built the frame for our slatted wall system, and now we're going to build the slats to put in there. And that's really pretty easy. We're going to do that as a family. There's a variety of different ways you could do it, but I think as a family is probably the simplest and easiest. So I'm going to go in and create a new file, family. And in this case, what I'm going to do is use a generic model. And as you can see, there's a variety of different templates for that, floor-based, line-based, and I'm going to use what is called a face-based, so I can attach it to the frame itself. So let's open this. Now, in a face-based, it starts out with a surface. This surface right here is just as an example, it won't show up. This is representative of the surface you're attaching to. So this is the face we're attaching to. And even though it says the reference floor plan, right, what we want is a 2x material right here, and I'm just going to make a generic 2x family, basically a vertical rectangle. So we're going to consider this vertical. Okay, so what's marked over here as back is actually the top. Okay. Once again, can we rename that? Yes, we can. So I'm going to call this top, left, and right. Yeah, that'll work. So top and bottom, left and right. So now I've renamed all of these, and I'm ready to model. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan and draw. I'm going to use a series of reference lines to begin the model. So we're going to go into reference lines, and I'm just going to draw a reference line from here to here, and another one from here to here, and here to here. Okay, and this represents one side of my 2x4, and then I'm going to come in and dimension it and put constraints on it. So I want this constrained here, and this is just like I did the overhang. Okay, same procedure. So if you watch the overhang video, it's the same exact thing. And then we're going to put up parameters on these dimensions here. And I'm going to label this. This is technically, let's see, this would be length. This would be the width. And in this case, instead of making this an instant so that we can change the width on the fly, I'm going to keep this as a type. And you'll see kind of why here in a minute. So I'm going to make that width, and then we can flex it just to test it. And so let's make the width now a 2-inch width. And oops, it didn't work. It didn't hold this. Oh, because I didn't make it equal. So let's go back and equal. Okay. And that just shows you an example when you don't lock the dimensions. Now we can test it again. 2 inches, apply, and okay. So you can see why we should always test things. Do a little flexing to see that everything's working right. So we're going to make this a parameter, and this is height. I'm going to make the height an instant though, so that I can change the length of the 2x material on the fly inside the model without having to type anything in. So I can just make it whatever I want visually. And then I'm going to go into one of these others, either the right or left. We'll just go over here to the right, and I'm going to put in a couple of more reference lines. And we're going to use this to define the depth. And we want this locked to the reference surface, so that this is always locked to the reference surface. And I'm going to just use and lock this. And now I'm going to put some dimensions in. So I'm going to, once again, find that reference line. I probably should have put my dimension in first. I think that's it. Okay. And once again, I'm going to make this a parameter and call it depth. And depth I'm going to keep as a type 2 so that I don't change this on the fly. I actually have to type in what I want the depth to be. So I'm going to change that, and then I'm going to flex it by saying, oh, let's just say this is a 2x6 material. We'll change the height to 6 feet and the depth to 6 inches. So it's 2x6, but not wood, because wood isn't nominally different. Okay, so now we've got my reference lines and they're all flexing correctly. I'm going to go back to my plan, and now I'm going to put my geometry in using these reference lines. And so I'm going to create an extrusion, and I'm going to start right here just by snapping a rectangle. This is going to be pretty easy. There. And I'm going to lock it to my reference lines. Lock it there and there. Lock it there. There we go. Now it's all locked in. Okay, so when these move, of course, these model lines move. Say okay, and it should put, I'll go back to right now, and it put me a model in there. But I want this surface to be tied to that reference line, right? So whenever I change the depth. And so let's go into the 3D view now. And I've locked it. So now here's my little 2x material. And of course I can do some checking to see, just flex it a little bit, play around. Let's say we wanted its width to be 4 by 10. Okay. Oh, that's 4 feet. I don't think we want it to be 4 feet. It might be a little bit. But I could make a material that was 4 feet or whatever. Okay. So now we've got a 4-inch wide by 10-inch deep material that's 6 foot long. And so this can be used as just a generic kind of vertical rectilinear model of anything if you want it to be. What I'm going to do real quickly is go back into my types here, and I'm going to change this back to 6, and this back to 2. Create a new type, okay? And this new type is going to be 2 by 6. Oops. And then I'm going to create another new type. And I'm going to call this 2 by 8. And I'll change this to 8 inches. And apply. Okay. Now I have 2 types. Okay. Oh, cancel. So depending on what type I go to, let's see if I can move this off to the side here. Right, 2 by 6. And now it's a 6-inch material, and I can go in there and just create a whole group of them, right? And then I'm going to give this a name. So I'm going to go in here. Let's just call it a slat right now. So we'll call it slat 2 since I already have a slat. And now I'm ready to load this into my project, and I want to put it on my building. So I'm going to come in here. Here's slat 2 that we just created. I'm going to start with 2 by 6s. And you'll notice as soon as I move to any surface, that 2 by is going to appear. Okay. So what I'm going to do is come down here to the very end, since I know, and depending on the orientation of the surface, it's going to reorient it, right? So it depends on the axis of the surface. But I want it to be vertical, so I'm going to apply it right there. And notice that since I left the control, I'm going to escape out. Notice I have the capability to change its length. So I can move its length up and down. Okay. Now I can't change its width because I'd have to change the type because I set those as being typed based. But I could select this real quickly. The material's a 2x8. So if I click on this, oops, I get 2x8. Yeah, and now it's a 2x8. So we'll go back to 2x6 though. Now what I want to do is copy. I'm just going to copy an array, so I'm going to do a couple of that just so that you can kind of see. I want these first ones to go all the way from top to bottom, so I'm going to grab this and take it down. And this is probably going to be better done in an elevation. And what I did is I created another elevation called the west screen, so that when I open it, I don't see anything but the screen itself. So you can see here are the mullions, here's my slat right over here, and all that other stuff isn't. And all I did was save it, change the clipping plane so that it clips it back. And you can look at one of my other videos if you want to know how to do a clipping plane. And then I'm going to move this all the way out to the edge over here of the frame. So there's my frame edge right there. So I'm going to align those. So I'm going to say, hey, tab, align this to that, and let's lock it. Okay. And the extension beyond, that's, I can get in there and be accurate if I want to, but we'll just leave it. I can make it exactly 1 foot or something, but it looks about right. And then what I want it to do is come to where that first window is appearing. So I want to go to this first grid line, and let's say that I want them to be about 6 inches apart. And then I'm going to go select that object, go back to array, and you can see here is a linear array. We can group it or associate it, and then and so I'm going to come in and say, do me 8, and do it move to the second. So I'm going to come in here, select there, 6 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and let it group it so that I can treat these as a group. And so that looks about right. Okay, that's all fine. It'll stay in place. We moved from one object to another object, so it wasn't sure how to attach it, but this will work. And so let's just copy them to the other end. And I'm going to copy those. So I just selected all instances, and I'm going to do a copy. I'm going to copy that from there to the other end of the building, to this part of the frame, right there. I'll just ignore that one. And so now I've got the ones that move all the way, and let's say that I'm going to put some in the middle too. So I'm going to put 8 of these in the middle, and we'll copy this from 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, to the center line there. And so now what I need is the short ones, because I want to leave this open right here, right? I'm going to go back to my 2x6 here and drag it over. Okay, and we'll just pop it in right there. That looks about right. Yeah, it's 5.5 inches. So let's move it to 6 inches. And we're going to adjust the heights of it. We'll go ahead and level it there, and we'll level it down to right there. So we want it to overhang just a little bit over the frame here to kind of hide the frame. And then once again, I'm going to do an array. So I'm going to select that, array, copy, 6 inches. And now we're going to change this to 36. But there's not enough in there, so I should be able to just click on that and then come in here and say 45. Yeah, and I got my spacing off. So I went offline and fixed that, moved it over, so you wouldn't have to watch me go through all the moves. And so we can continue to add this in, so that eventually, let's open up And you can see what that would look like. And let's go to the building file here. You can see my little struts. And then I started playing with kind of the design a little bit. What if I wanted this uneven? And so if I go back, screen elevation, and then we can play with the different links because I made these as instances. So now we can play with the different links. And then of course there's a variety of different ways that I could do that by either moving them. I could set in some model lines to set as guides, right, for how far I pull them down. So I could, draw some model lines. And I can kind of sculpt to kind of, interesting opening. Let's move it. Okay. If you move the object without adjusting the little handles, right, it'll just move the whole length of the object. If you adjust it by the handles, then the side that you don't adjust will be the same. So that's how you do a vertical slatted wall. You could do the same thing for slats, a pergola, or a horizontal by using a architecture, roof. We have to go to a footprint. And if I go to a plan view, I can set this to a sloped glazing, and I could build a frame using the kind of a sloped window wall system. Or if I wanted that sloped, then you would use sloped here instead of just a vertical system. Okay, so that's how you do that.